we're discussing Parshas Toldos, the birth of Isaac, and then Isaac meeting Rivka, that was last week's portion, and marrying her. And unfortunately they struggled in the beginning, or it was intentional that God loves the prayers of the righteous, and therefore he went ahead and he made her barren in the beginning so he could get the Abraham, and he could get Yitzchak and Rivka to pray, as we'll see. In fact, it's an interesting story, they say, over one of the great rabbis in Jerusalem. I think Rav Zalman Meltzer, that one day they said that he was up all night. And so the kids all were saying, like, why was the rabbi up all night? What happened? We got to find out. So he lived like in the 19, I guess, 30s, around there, 1920s in Israel. So what happened, the story went like this: some woman came at night, some stranger, another Jew, but he didn't know who it was, and she was crying, sobbing, saying, I love my husband, we get along great, but I'm worried I can't have any children. I'm afraid that he might want to leave me and go to someone else and have more kids, or have some kids. So whatever. So then she left. So most people say, okay, great. So I'll add you in your prayers. I'll put you on the list of names we're putting on. But Rabbi Zalman, he felt the pain like it was his own wife, like it was his own daughter, and he stayed up all night praying and crying, and that's how he was up the whole night. And as the story has it, whatever, I guess 9 months later or within the year, this woman became pregnant with the child. So God loves, the prayers of the righteous. So that's what happened here, that she was barren for a little bit, in order that it wasn't just her. Sarah also didn't become pregnant right away. She became pregnant later on. That's what happened here. That she had a difficulty giving birth, and that's why it says Yitzchak prayed in one corner, Rivka prayed in the other corner, and they both prayed to God, and it says, and God heard their prayers. Actually, it says God heard Vayerto. It says Isaac's prayers were answered. Why was Isaac's prayers answered more than Rivka's prayers? So what Rashi writes here is because we know, unfortunately, where did Rivka come from? Rivka came from a family of wicked people. They were bad people. Nothing. And
that's where witches came from.
Yeah. No, wicked as not.
Yeah, wicked. Isn't that
but wicked. I know what you're saying. I'm saying here, you're right.
Yeah.
I'm saying here, but that wasn't the place. Wicked. I'm using wicked to describing them. I know what you're saying, right? And Isaac came from a family of righteous people, Abraham, Sarah. So therefore, because all things being equal, we see both prayers were meaningful, but Isaac had an additional merit of what we call schus avos, the merit of our forefathers. And therefore, it says he answered because of Isaac's prayers. And even though we have a statement, our rabbis tell us, but makam bali tshuva, in the place where people who come back to Judaism from non-observant homes and they become observant, in those places righteous people can't even stand. God loves the bali tshuva so much that they even where righteous. So those are two schools of thought among the commentators. Who's on a higher level? Is it someone who's been righteous his whole life or her whole life? Or is it someone who came from a family that wasn't righteous and they became righteous? That's even a higher level. So that's, either way, they're both good. It's a discussion which one's higher. So we see Isaac's prayer was accepted, and soon enough she became pregnant. And we said, Vayitzrotetzu habanim bekirba. They were running from the word rut. They were fighting inside, as the Medrash says. Yaakov tried to get out to the yeshiva to study more, and Esav tried to jump out to the place of idol worship. And of course, it doesn't mean of course there's free choice. Everyone can choose their own way, but people do have different inclinations in life. So let's say, for instance, someone loves the sight of blood. That's just, you have some of these people in camp, all they do is swat flies all day, and they love the blood coming out of the flies. I'm not one of them, by the way. I can't stand that stuff. And just people just love the sight of blood. Does that mean they have to become murderers? No, of course not. Let them become a shochet. Let them become a slaughter a kosher animal. Let them become a mohel, a doctor. Exactly. There's many things in life. It's what you use it for. It's to take the midas, the characteristics we have in us, and use them for good.
That's where ultrasounds came from this story here. And they knew through, actually in psychology, through clinical observation, that they were going to have 2 babies.
Oh, very good,
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And that's what they point out, that, and so too, doesn't mean Yaakov could have chose any route, but he happened to be good. We see people people have different temperaments. You still have free choice, but obviously people have different inclinations to do different things. It doesn't mean you have to do it. So for instance, like they say, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babel, and he almost took over the whole world. It says he was writing different songs or lyrics, and it said he would have wrote things in there that would have put David's book of Tehillim to shame.
Oh, can I say something?
You bet.
On the television last week, it was on there that we now found another planet in our solar system. Do you know that or not?
I heard about it.
Yeah.
Very good.
Between Mercury and Venus or Mars, and they found the planet, and they also landed a machine on Mars, and they found that there's carbon on Mars and carbon on the moon, and water on Mars, and water on the moon.
They found water on Mars.
Craters on the moon are filled up with water.
Oh, so they found water on the moon.
Now they want to send a spaceship there with several doctors of science.
Oh, wow.
They're going to send them to the new planet and to the moon and to Mars now again.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah.
So that's what they point out, that Nebuchadnezzar was going to write book of... Someone at the door?
Yeah.
You want to come in?
No, she's just walking around.
Who is it? We don't know. Okay. So either way, but he wanted to write a book of poetry that would have put the book of Psalms to shame. And an angel came by and gave him a little patch. And he stopped. So the question is, what happened to free choice? Why did they stop him from writing poetry or writing, meaningful words? So the answer is, no one stopped him. They gave him a little patch. The point being, what was the greatness of Tehillim? It wasn't not only the words itself are special, but when did David write it? He was running away from his son, Shaul, one tragedy after another. And it's one thing to write your music when you're sitting there on the beach with your guitar, you have the nice breeze by the water, you get the mood. But it's in a lot of other, when you're running for your life and you're running from one place to another, you don't have a second free and you write Tehillim, that's a much higher level.
How old was King David when they called him a king? Any idea?
It's a good question. We're going to get into that. Yeah, because also at what point Shlomo became king very young, so we'll get into that.
Solomon.
Yeah, King Solomon.
Yeah.
I think while he was a minor even, they discussed.
King David was a minor.
No, King
Solomon was a minor too?
Yeah, that's what they discussed. We'll get into.
Was Jesus descended from David?
Not that we know of.
What's that?
Jesus is Joseph. Joseph descended from David. Jesus.
No, we know the Gemara talks about. He was one of the people. We know he wasn't the Messiah and stuff, and isn't. I'm saying, but they talk about him in the literature. Yeah. So that's what they point out here. That people have different inclinations. What you do with yourself, that's the important thing, and that's why that's why the question is Just let me finish. And
Yeah.
So we have a tradition that before, while you're a fetus in the womb, an angel comes down and teaches you the whole Torah. It teaches you all the Bible, everything. So the question is, if an angel is teaching you the Bible, the Torah, so why was Yaakov trying to get out? It said when she was walking by a shul, a yeshiva, Yaakov tried to jump out to learn. Why was he jumping out to learn? He was in the best possible spot. He had an angel teaching him the Torah.
And the angels, will that be in years from now, separate like this? The angels are planetarium scientists or beings from Mars. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
Nope.
Could that be a way to retrain the Bible?
Yeah, it would be. Well, it's not the angels we're talking about here, but
you know what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
I'm saying that in terms of other area, but angels we're talking about God sending down this it's basically like a message to God, message from God.
Yeah.
And that's what they point out, that the answer is because you could have the best teacher in the world, the best Rabbi, the best rabbi, you could have the best friends in the world, but if you're in the wrong environment, that could have a bad influence on you.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how great the angel was teaching Jacob Torah, Jacob wanted out of there because with a partner like Esav around, the influence of Esav was too great, and he wanted to get out of there, and that's why he was trying to get out. And that's what the problem was. Rivka went to say, what's the problem? Why am I having such a difficult pregnancy? And I have a schizophrenic inside. When I walk by a place of idol worship, he wants to get out. And when he walked by a Jewish place, like, what's going on here? So she didn't realize at the time it was twins. She thought it was one child. And she thought it was a schizophrenic.
Was that the first schizophrenic in the history of the Jews?
Possibly.
Yeah.
The answer was it wasn't, because we'll see it was two people. She thought it was one. So she thought like by Ellie, like when
but both babies were schizophrenic.
No, right? She thought it was one child, and she thought it was the same child who tried to go to a house of idol worship and a house of Torah.
Yeah.
No, so the answer was, we'll see that no, it's twins, and you don't have to worry, they're two separate children.
Uh-huh.
But originally she didn't know that. She thought it was one child. Like Eliyahu complained, like how long could he complaining about the Jewish people? They serve God in the morning, and they worship the idol worship in the afternoon. You can't do that. That's the schizo.
Yeah.
So the answer was, Shnei Goyim B'Vidnek. Don't worry. You don't have to worry, Rivka. It's two different kids, and therefore they're both going to grow up differently. That one's going to grow. One would be like Yaakov in the Jewish nation, and the other is going to be Esav. So as the pasuk says, Vayetze Harishon Admoni, that the first one emerged red, entirely like a hairy mantle. That's why Yaakov was pushing him away, and they named him Esav. After that, his brother emerged with his hand grasping on the heel of Isaac. So they called his name Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. So therefore, that's what the name Yaakov comes the word from the heel. He was holding on to the heel of Esav when he came out. So we see, in fact, some point out, that's why the Rambam writes, why do we have all this talk about the Messiah now, false messiahs? It's all a preparation so when the real Messiah comes out. Esav was a preparation. Esav came out first so they could spread the word, the concept of the Messiah. So when the real Messiah comes from Jacob, etc., from Judah, we'll be able to recognize it, yeah?
What happened when was the first Assyrian section known in the Bible? What year was the first Assyrian child born?
A C-section?
Yeah.
It's a good question. Who was the first C-section baby? Because they talk about they talk about C-section in the Talmud already. In fact, based on the verse, it talks about regarding circumcision, Milah. We all know the law is after you have a son, you do a circumcision on what day?
On the 10th day.
On the
Day 8, right.
Yeah.
On the 8th day, you do a circumcision. However, and what happens if day 8 falls out on Shabbos? What happens?
You can't have the baby. You can't have it done till Sunday morning or Sunday afternoon.
So normally we don't do a bris on Shabbos, but if it's day 8, we do a bris even on Shabbos because we say a day 8 baby supersedes the Shabbos. So we do, even though we don't blow shofar on Shabbos, or we don't shake but milah we do. If it's a milah b'zmana, if it's a day 8 baby, we do a circumcision on Shabbos. However, what happens if it's a C-section? So when do you do? So there's an interesting discussion in the Talmud.
Yeah.
A C-section baby and it's a boy. Do you do the circumcision on day 1, or you do the circumcision on day 8? Why? What? Yeah, that's a discussion. Why should a C-section baby be different? Because from the juxtaposition of the verses, it says, we know when a woman has a child, naturally, so obviously besides the baby coming out, blood comes out. That's just part of having a baby. And therefore, because of the other things that come out, like blood, so she becomes, not anymore, because we don't have she still does, but we don't have the sacrifices today. A woman becomes defiled for 7 days, and she can't go.
Has to wash for 7 days.
Yeah, 7. All the different details, wherever they involve. But day 8, biblically speaking, she could go back together with her husband.
Mm-hmm.
So the Talmud says we're not going to have a bris before day 8 because the first 7 days the woman and husband can't be together, meaning they can't live together. So therefore, day 8 we want the husband, the mother, and father to celebrate together. So we wait to day 8.
My nephew Sean, he had a pidyon haben when he was on the 8th or 10th day for the pidyon. Pidyon haben could be 30 days too.
Yeah, that's when it is.
Yeah, 30 days.
You have to wait for 30 days.
Pidyon haben, redemption of the firstborn.
Right. If you have a firstborn, but it has to be firstborn from the woman. It has to be the woman's first child, and you can't be. The husband can't be. The father of the child can't be a Kohen or a Levi. So it has to be a Yisrael. So therefore, many firstborns, and there are no pidyon haben because it's.
What about girls? Right?
So it's not. I mean, you have other. You would have but pidyon haben is the redemption of the son. That had to do with doing work, sacrifice in the temple. We have different things for a woman. But I'm saying the concept here is releasing him back from the Kohen, that the Kohen, so to speak, because the firstborn son used to have to do the work in the temple. So now the priests take the place. So it had to do with that. So therefore, the issue is by a C-section baby, there's no blood that comes out because it's not coming out of the uterus. It's not coming out of that place. It's coming out from the womb because you're cutting it open to get the child out. So therefore, a woman does not become defiled. There's no blood. So therefore, maybe you should have the circumcision day 1. So that's a dispute in the Talmud. So what we do is we wait to day 8 because even if it's day 1, but day 8 is also good. Mm-hmm. But if it's day 8 and you do day 1, it's a no-go. However, if it falls out on Shabbos day 8, we have to wait to day 9 to Sunday because maybe really it was supposed to be on day 1, mm-hmm. and therefore it's not considered a circumcision in its appropriate time. Mm-hmm. So it says that so what happens as they grew up, Yigdalu Hanarim, and what did Esav become? A hunter. Isho de Asayid.
A hunter? Really?
He was the first hunter, or one of the first.
This we never took in Hebrew school.
And Yaakov Ishtam and Yoshe was sitting in the tent studying. So Esav, he wasn't necessarily. Because we also know Nimrod. Also, there are other characters also that were, hunters and that. But the question is, can one become a hunter? Someone asked one of the great rabbis in the 18th century, in the 1800s, could a nice Jewish boy become a hunter? So first he goes explaining how he should not become a hunter, because hunting is cruel, you're killing animals all day. It's not a profession it's not the ideal profession for a Yid, for a Jew. However, he says, is it prohibited? So then he says, no, if you need it to make a living, if you need it for a parnasa, so then you're allowed. Because what's the issue? Because hunting involves a certain amount of danger. Because either you could get killed by other hunters, by mistake I'm assuming, or you get killed by wild animals. So therefore you're putting yourself at risk. Because normally you're not allowed to put yourself in danger. So the rule is, to make a living, you're allowed to put yourself at a higher level risk.
What was the weapon that they made, the hunters? Like a spear?
Yeah, the spear, maybe the bow and arrow they had then.
Yeah.
And that's why it says, Esav says, Hinei anochi holech lamus. He says, I'm always walking, verse 32, look, I am going to die. What do you mean I'm going to die? Because he realized he's a hunter, eventually the animals are going to get him, or the other hunters. So therefore he knows, so what do I need the birthright for, he says. But that's what Esav was, a hunter, and therefore what about a Jew becoming a boxer? In fact, I read in the Canadian Jewish news this week how there's this Israeli boxer. What's the story with being a boxer, a wrestler, all these type of things?
Jewish, you know what they have in Israel too? Was on today, last week, Rabbi. Israel now has a hockey team.
Oh, they do?
Ice hockey.
Oh wow! Where did they get the ice? I guess artificial.
I guess so. Yeah, it was on the news this week.
I read about that a long time ago.
You read about that too.
A long time ago.
Oh.
Yes,
I saw pictures of them.
And the Jewish people, they had every year they have between 542 or 868 deaths in accidents, in car accidents in Israel every year.
How many?
542 or 822.
No, in fact, I heard that there are more, at least it used to be this way, maybe it's still true, there used to be more deaths on the highway than there are in the army. And I know
the highways in Israel.
Yeah, but believe me, I know.
Yeah.
Someone told me, I didn't believe them. I got to Israel, I took a taxi to the place I was going to, and this guy was going 80 miles an hour on the wrong side of the road, and he couldn't even see it. Now I didn't have to wonder too long why. I was just hoping I wouldn't become one of that statistic, and luckily
I saw a picture of the hockey team inside the ice rink.
How was it?
It was nice. It was a big rink, and they were all dressed in red and white.
And they're called the Machapela.
Maccabees, yeah.
Yeah, Maccabees. Yeah.
Hebrew.
Yeah, Hebrew athletes.
Yeah, like the Jewish bear, Hebrew, they say.
Yeah.
So they point out that he was hunted. Therefore, we learn from here that one is not, in general, one should not put themselves in a dangerous situation, and you're never allowed to put, and certainly not suicide. But what we're saying is you're allowed to take a higher level of risk if you need it to make a living. You can't do something silly like jumping off a roof. But if you have to clean windows and you have to go on top of the 20th floor, you're allowed to, because we assume you could take a higher level risk to make a living. But this, to do it for recreation purposes, that would be more problematic. Yeah, Bernie, what were you saying? Any more questions?
What was the first the Tower of Babel? Could that be interpreted with new commentary that it could have been the first high-rise apartment building?
Right. So they talk about it. They talk about the Tower of Babel. That whatever happened to it? Where is it today?
Must be in the fossils. I mean, they still have to discover it.
So the Medrash says a third of it was destroyed. A third of it is sunk in the ground. And a third of it, you could go all the way up on top of the palm branch and look down, and and let's say the buildings, the people look like grasshoppers. In other words, it's so high. If you go on top of the tower, you look down, people look like grasshoppers. if it's so high, where is it then? We don't know where it is. So it doesn't mean.
What does the Tower of Babel mean, though? Is it a tower? Is it a high-rise apartment building? Is it a signal?
Yeah, that's what I'm explaining. So therefore, what?
So would it be the signal?
Exactly. So what does it mean? It means as follows: that during those days they used to fight God. They used to shoot missiles at God, fight God.
They had missiles in those days?
No, I mean like whatever.
Oh, nowadays.
Whatever the equivalent weapons were, so to speak, they were fighting against God. So that we don't have anymore. Fighting against God. In fact, everyone has God on their side. So that's already burnt down.
It was burnt down.
That in other words, the message that people don't fight against God anymore. They bring God on their side. They fight in the name of God. Everyone has God on their side. Secondly, that your part that was sunk, that was the part that was sunk. That's but it's still laying on the surface. This concept of making a united peace, that people always claim they're around, they're going to do it, but ultimately it usually never fares well. But thirdly, the fact that people attribute what God does to nature, that in fact that's what they said, you know what, the clouds are getting, the water is getting too heavy, they're going to fall out of the clouds. So they thought it was something based on that. So therefore,
before they knew what rain was.
Exactly. Turning the act of God into happenstance, that we have a lot today, and that's what it means. The third of the tower is still up. Doesn't mean up literally, it's not physically there, but that concept of today that we attribute miracles to nature, that we have to work on. So those are a couple of interesting ideas on the beginning of the parsha. We talk about the birth of Isaac, meeting a wife, getting married, the problems with childbirth, and of course Rivka having twins, Esav and Yaakov, and we see at a young age, as we saw, they both had their own inclinations. Yaakov went to the house of study, Esav went out more hunting.